Please appreciate this presentation has been prepared with all sincerity and to the best of knowledge of students, teachers, and volunteers. We welcome words of encouragement and also suggestions for improvement. For use in academics or any kind of exams, please verify and correlate with your course books. For becoming an associate and/or sending contributions in different subjects, including storytelling, please get in touch with your brief profile at baskenjoy@gmail.com. So welcome back everyone. This will be lesson number 3 for tissues in class 9 biology. And in today's lecture, we'll be giving a brief overview of the next lecture, which will be in depth of animal tissues. This will just be in general the overview of what are animal tissues. So firstly, we'll draw some comparisons and some reasoning from animal life and their corresponding tissues. So because animals are constantly on the move, like they're constantly doing some sort of physical activity, like a dog is running, we're always doing some kind of work. Animals are constantly moving, they're constantly doing some activity. So therefore their tissues will be more living as opposed to the dead cells in plants. They will have more living cells and living tissues, and they will have more muscular tissues as opposed to the supportive tissues in plants, as plants just used to stay in one spot, so they need supportive tissue so as to stay upright. However, animals are moving, so they need muscular tissue on the other hand. And also there will be less storage tissue in animals as compared to plants. This is because in animals they're constantly on the move, as I said, so they will be constantly consuming all of their energy, so there will be less energy left for storage. So this results in less storage tissue present in the animal also. So there are mainly 4 types of animal tissues. The first one being epithelial tissues, the second one connective tissues, we have muscular tissues, and we have nervous tissues. You might be familiar with few of them such as muscular and nervous. Epithelial and connective might be new to you. So what is epithelial tissue? Epithelial tissue is the covering or protective tissue in the animal body. Like in plants, we have the epidermis. In plants, we have the epidermis. In animals, we will have epithelial tissue instead. It's basically the covering. It covers all the organs in the body. It covers all the cavities in the body. It forms a barrier to keep organ systems separate. Now, you might be wondering what is a cavity. We'll get in depth on what is a cavity in the next chapter, which is on biodiversity. But you can think of cavity like an open space in the body. Like we have our uh, stomach cavity, we have like our abdomen cavity in which we have our small intestine, so our large intestine, liver, pancreas, etc. So a cavity is basically it's basically, you can say, an area in the body where certain organs, it's basically an empty space in which organs are fit inside. So that's a cavity. So this epithelial tissue, it will cover the organs, it will cover the cavities, and it will also form a barrier to keep organ systems separate. An example will be the lining inside our mouth, and the lining of blood vessels is epithelial tissue. And yeah. Next up, we have connective tissue. Now, this might be new to most of you. Connective tissue is the support tissue, and it supports, protects, and gives structure to other tissues and organs in the body. So its functions include it stores fat, it helps in the transportation of nutrients between tissues and organs, it repairs damaged tissues. Now, what does it really mean? Like, what is connective tissue? Like, you can think of it in a way it connects two things. In the next lecture, we'll look at the types of connective tissues. Like, we have tendons. Tendons is a connective tissue. It connects bones to muscles. We have ligaments. They are also connective tissues. They connect bone to bone. So there are various types of connective tissues. Some store fat, some help in the transportation of nutrients, which is blood. Blood is also a connective tissue, and some repair damaged tissues. So connective tissues are found throughout the body, and they do all sorts of things. Some of them connect things, some of them store fat, they store some nutrients, some of them repair the body, etc. So bone is an example, cartilage is an example of connective tissues, and blood is also an example. Now don't worry, we'll get into detail of every single type of connective tissue in the next lecture. And this is an example of a connective tissue. So next up we have muscular tissues. You must all be familiar with this, so this will be pretty straightforward. Muscular tissue is responsible for all the movement in our body, be it voluntary or involuntary. You must have heard that there are voluntary muscles and involuntary muscles. Voluntary, like we have control over them. However, there are involuntary muscles also which we don't have control, like the beating of the heart. The beating of the heart, we cannot control it. It happens on its own. So that's an example of an involuntary muscle. Now, muscular tissues contain muscle fibers, which contain special contractile proteins, which contract and relax to cause movement. Like like when you flex a bicep, for suppose, when you flex a bicep, then you're contracting your muscles. When you let go, you're relaxing your muscles. So muscles are constantly contracting and relaxing to cause movement, and this is with the help of contractile proteins. And we have both voluntary and involuntary muscles. We'll also get into more detail in the next lecture about muscular tissues and its types. Next up, we have the last type of tissue, nervous tissue. Now, all cells possess the ability to respond to stimuli till some extent. Like if I just have a cell living in a free environment, it's a cell and it's in direct contact with its external environment. Now, if something happens to it, if it senses that this is a threat, this object is a threat, it will still do something. It still has some capabilities which are written down in its DNA. It can eject some chemical to get rid of the threat. It can sometimes even eat the threat and digest it. It can move away from the threat. Now these are all long processes. They take long amount of time. However, nervous tissues, they are highly specialized for being stimulated. Being stimulated means that a change is happening to them. Like nervous tissues, they're always on the lookout for changes taking place. They're always on the lookout for signals, and they pass these signals very rapidly. And these nervous tissues are present dominantly in animals because they're constantly moving. They have to constantly move their body and they have to be in control of their movements. And these normal types of stimuluses such as chemicals, eating, moving, these are seen in like unicellular organisms and plants also. However, nervous tissues are specifically for animals and they allow for really fast reflexes and movements. We'll take a deeper look into them as well. So today was just a small intro into animal tissues. We talked about the type of tissues in animals and how they differ from plants and why they differ from plants based on their lifestyle, such as they're constantly moving, so they have low storage tissues, etc. And then we looked at the main types of animal tissues: epithelial, connective, muscular, and nervous tissue. Next time we will dive deeper into this and we will discuss the following topics: the types of epithelial tissues, types of connective tissues, types of muscular tissues, and how muscles actually contract and relax. And so this will basically teach you like how the signals are sent and to the muscle, and how the muscle knows how to contract, how to relax, what chemicals are released, and how an impulse travels through a neuron. How exactly does a neuron transfer all these electrical signals? How does a neuron actually transmit data that, okay, I want you to move this leg, I want you to move this arm or this finger, I want you to write this word. So we'll take a look at this and dive deeper into these topics next time. Until then, bye bye.